Video.
Well, I am.
Camera off.
Who most of you know as Padma Shri, Dr. Vittal Lodi, an oasis of technology was not what it appears today.
Because
A few years ago, it was an inconspicuous village, a near non-entity without any identity whatsoever of its own, an obscure dot on the map of state of Maharashtra in and cut off from the development technology first at a point of urban existence. Never in the reckoning of let alone the world, even the motherland of Maharashtra. Actually, this region, this soil, the people here were my real life, very core and essence of my existence. I'm sure an immortal part of my soul will remain embedded in this nice space of Lodi till infinity. I was a simple farmer, well, not even a farmer, but an agricultural laborer. I used to wander a lot and gather my village books under a banyan tree. But what seemed like just a casual chit-chat to most of them. But in reality, however, it was my quest for knowledge about their lives, their health and habits, their problems and striking poverty, their aims and aspirations. Those were my problems, because I belonged to the same society. I used to get shattered when I often heard about their poverty and hunger. After all, they were my kids and kids. They were my people. I was convinced that self-respect, self-reliance, and self-empowerment were the only answers to their impoverished and pitiable state of affairs. Gradually, they recognized, and the Lodi Cooperative Credit Society started in 1923 to help the farmers for their capital investment in agriculture, also to provide them a working capital. The very essence of my inspiration, of course, is the soil of Lodi, imbued and saturated with sweetness. The sweetness which it pours in its sugar cane. Then why should the sons of the soil be deprived of such a sweet bounty in their own life? This thought vexed me to no extent, and finally fueled in me the desire to initiate a sizable cooperative sugar factory, a harbinger of sweetness in our lives. With the farmers willing, extending their helping hand, it was unanimously decided to start a sugar factory. But who would help us but the task? The villagers came forward to help with paltry sum of money, jewelry, or stretches of land, and some other such meager sources of assistance. The blessings came in the form of the great economist Dr. Dhananjay Gadkar and many such eminent persons coming forward for help. And then within no time, our dream of cooperative sugar factory was transformed into a reality in 1949. It was Asia's first ever cooperative venture of its kind. A number of schools and institutions were established, some even exclusive for girls. The cooperative movement opened the floodgates of happiness, progress, and prosperity in this region for all of us. As the cooperative movement gained momentum, each and every person born on the soil was motivated total transformation of their life and region became the singular aim of their life. But this required tremendous amount of funds. Considering limitations of cooperative credit societies, the village initiated a bank on the meager capital of 200 rupees. Today, it is a scheduled bank and its turnover is in billions, yes, in billions of rupees. I always used to feel that the women and the children of soil is the center of all developments. Therefore, a number of projects concerning women's education were proposed and initiated. They proved instrumental in igniting and nurturing their self-respect and self-reliance. The government of India recognized Pravara Nagar Institute, Padma Shri and doctorate that conferred upon well, one man's life would never be enough for development of a region, particularly as backward as that mine. I often wish this noble task has to be carried forward by my progeny and generations to come. My son, Baba Sahib, developed a wide network of institutions in this area and neighboring regions. The work of Bharat was recognized by the government of India. Padma Bhushan and doctorate were conferred upon him. Being the proud son of the soil that he is, Bharat realized actually that illiteracy and ignorance subjected the rural masses to numerous health problems. Since health is directly related to the productivity, accessible, affordable, and effective healthcare services were immediate exigency. And in 1972, my Pravara witnessed the establishment of Pravara Medical Trust. The Pravara Hospital holds regular multi-diagnostic treatment camps for the rural poor and needy in Ahmednagar district and also in neighboring villages. These camps are completely free of cost, thereby ensuring that healthcare facilities reach to all my people. I feel so satisfied to see that hospital provides quality services to rural people and hospital has been upgraded with ultra-modern diagnostic and treatment facilities. My Pravara children get free medical help through regular checkups in their own schools. My immortal soul rested in peace when my son announced the policy of completely free treatment to all children and elderly people. Some deserving cases, apart from this, are treated free. These efforts were also recognized by the government of India, and Pravara Hospital has been conferred the National Award of Best Institution for providing services to senior citizens and awareness generation. I feel happy when I witness number of medical students of this college serving as ambassadors of the mission of trust in a remote rural area.
first year from an adopted village, and we continue to follow them for 5.5 years, including in our internship. We study various factors like socioeconomic, cultural, environmental, and behavioral patterns in the context of rural health.
After assessing the academic and the research excellence achieved at the global level, the health services rendered to the rural community in the last 25 years, the University Grants Commission, UGC, Government of India, bestowed the status of deemed university to Pravara Institute of Medical Science. I feel so proud to see that Pravara Institute of Medical Sciences deemed university is one of the pioneer medical universities, wherein the constituent colleges are implementing problem-based learning. And more important is, the main emphasis is on community-based medical education. To bridge the gap between ever-increasing demands of the medical personnel in rural areas, Pravara witnessed the establishment of rural dental college. The main focus is to impart community-based dental education, improve awareness in oral hygiene, and provide super specialized dental treatments to the rural masses.
I applied for Masters in Global Health of level of duration at Karolinska Institute at Stockholm, Sweden. My objective at Karolinska was to compare the European system of education with the Indian system of education. I was surprised to see that though our institution is located in rural India, yet it is so well known in Europe and especially Karolinska.
Hi, my name is Heather Johnson, and I'm from Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. I've really enjoyed my time here at Pravara Institute of Medical Sciences. I've got to see and experience so many things that I would otherwise not have been able to see in the United States.
We have always aimed at holistic approach to healthcare and creating facilities under one roof. The Pravara Medical Trust encompasses all disciplines, including the College of Physiotherapy. I feel immensely privileged that Dr. Abdul Kalam had visited here in 2005 and appreciated the efforts in community rehabilitation.
I appreciate, I plan to, I would like to.
The Centers of Social Medicine strives to integrate health with other sectors for overall development through community-oriented medical education and research. The center trains public health practitioners at global level and skill development programs at grassroots level. The center has been implementing comprehensive rural, tribal, and urban community health services and interventional research projects, which are supported by national and state health ministries, Pathfinder International USA, IA3 Global Internship Program USA, and Global Fund through Fight ATM, etc. Following the advice of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the trust has taken the responsibility of a replication of Pravara healthcare model in other rural areas of the state of Maharashtra. The values of tireless enterprise towards a cherished goal and social responsibility inculcated in me by my mother and grandmother fuel me with passion to pursue my ultimate goal. The mission transcends all barriers and the passion continues. Rama, my Prabhupada, are living phenomenon of complete transformation. Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so very happy. People should not have come out of Prabhupada for any fundamental help whatsoever, be it education, health, or employment. That was my dream, the dream that is now a reality. Prabhupada, the mission continues.
Good morning, dear all participants. Welcome to Pravara Physio webinar series. We are here with our last webinar, webinar 4, organized by Department of Orthopedic Physiotherapy, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam College of Physiotherapy, Pravara Institute of Medical Sciences, deemed to be university. Our Pravara Institute of Medical Sciences, deemed to be university, was established under Section 3 of the UGC Act 1956 on 29 September 2003 by Government of India, Ministry of Human Resource Development, under the Pravara Medical Trust. The Pravara Medical Trust is the parent organization of our university, and it was established in 1972 in a small village, Ahmednagar district, by a visionary Padam Shri Dr. Vittal Rao Vikhe Patil sir, the founder of cooperative movement in India. We pay our earnest tribute to sir and look for his blessing to lead this online course successfully. In 1976, the trust started providing primary and secondary level medical care with establishment of a modest hospital of 100 beds. And over a period of time, this hospital grew into more than 1,200 beds, multidisciplinary super specialty medical institute with state-of-the-art facilities. With the vision and determination of our founder, Padma Bhushan Dr. Bala Sahab Vikhe Patil sir, the medical college started in 1984, and then we are moving forward with these institutes under the ambit of this university. The Rural Medical College and Hospital, Rural Dental College and Hospital, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam College of Physiotherapy, College of Nursing, Center for Social Medicine, and Center for Biotechnology. We pay our sincere tribute to Sir and seek his blessing to follow his footsteps. It was Sir's vision that we at Pravara are following is think globally, act locally. Our trust has received appreciation from His Excellency Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Sir, the former President of India, for the pioneer work done in the field of integrated rural development and appreciated the participative model of integrated rural development followed at Loni as role model for the development of rural India and has been referred by His Excellency as operative model of PURA, PURA, providing urban amenities to rural areas. To acknowledge the vision of His Excellency, College of Physiotherapy named after him as Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam College of Physiotherapy. Our physiotherapy college was started as the Department of Physiotherapy in 1976 at Pravara Rural Hospital to cater to the preventive, curative, therapeutic, and rehabilitation needs of the rural people. Then the need was felt to impart the much needed physiotherapy training program, and hence Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam College of Physiotherapy was established in 1997 to achieve this objective. Our college offers all the program of physiotherapy. We are offering BPT, MPT, and PhD, all the programs of physiotherapy in this college. We have 5 departments and 1 center running in our college. Department of Orthopedic Physiotherapy, Department of Neurophysiotherapy, Department of Cardiorespiratory Physiotherapy, Department of Community Physiotherapy, Department of Pediatric Physiotherapy, and a Spinal Cord Injury Rehab Center, which is named after the mother of the soil, late Srimati Sindhu Dai V.K. Patil ma'am, at Srimati Sindhu Dai E. V.K. Patil Spinal Cord Injury Rehabilitation Center. We pay our sincere tribute to ma'am and seek a blessing for the successful organization of this webinar. Students of our college received international scholarship for higher studies at European universities. The Pravara Institute of Medical Sciences participated with Erasmus Mundus Scholarship Program. Under this program, students and faculty from both the sites receives international scholarship, which covers transportation, hostel facility, and tuition fees for higher studies in partner universities. We had a student exchange program under the Linnaeus Palme Scholarship Program at Physiotherapy Division, Karolinska Institute at Sweden. And many more will go on. I, Dr. Neeraj Kumar, Head of Department, in the Department of Orthopedic Physiotherapy, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam College of Physiotherapy, on behalf of whole Pravara family, invites you all to this informative online session on a significant theme, systematic review and meta-analysis by our keynote speaker, Dr. Toshniwal Nandlal ji sir. Dr. Toshniwal sir has completed his master's in orthodontics from Government Dental College and Hospital, Nagpur in 1993. Presently, he is professor and head Department of Orthodontics, Rural Dental College at Pravara Institute of Medical Sciences, Loni, Maharashtra. He is an active PG teacher since last 20 years and PhD teacher since last 5 years. He has completed his master's in public health too. He has delivered several guest lectures, keynote addresses in almost all orthodontic or dental conferences at PG conventions in last 15 years. He has won several awards from Indian Orthodontic Society for clinical innovations in functional jaw orthopedics best research and clinical papers. He has almost 100 publications to his credit at national and international journals. Presently, he is working on editorial board of several national and international index journals. He is a section editor on growth and development in the Journal of Indian Orthodontic Society. He has organized almost 17 national symposiums, including recent Indian Orthodontic Society, PG and exam orientation program. He has worked as a national coordinator for almost all Indian Dental Association and Indian Orthodontic Society conferences in last 2 decades. He has drafted the syllabus on bioethics for Dental Council of India. His special area of interest are functional jaw orthopedics and evidence-based orthodontics. He is an active member of prestigious national and international organizations like IDA, IOS, WFO, EOS, and AAO. He received several honors and awards for faculty development programs at various health universities. Sir will enlighten us on the topic systematic review and meta-analysis. This webinar will be chaired by Dr. M. Sangeeta Ma'am, Dean Academic Affairs, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam College of Physiotherapy, with all the blessings of our Honorable Pro-Chancellor, Dr. Rajendra Vikhe Patil Sir, and Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Y.M. Jairaj Sir. We are ready to start with our fourth webinar. Now I request the webinar chair, Dr. M. Sangeeta Ma'am, to give us the permission to start the webinar. Over to Sangeeta Ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Neeraj. Good morning, all. First of all, I would like to welcome and thank our Nandal sir for accepting our invitation and joining us today. I would also like to welcome our participants and friends for the day. And believe me, this session definitely would be helpful in evidence synthesis as well as knowledge generation. Sir is going to enlighten us regarding the systematic review and meta-analysis. I request the students, particularly the students and the researchers, to make use of this opportunity. And I thank all of you for encouraging us to conduct this kind of webinars. Thank you. And now I hereby declare the webinar 4 in the Pravara Physio webinar series officially open. Thank you.
Now, the participants, I'll request, I'll give you some rules of this webinar. First, please, all of you are requested to mute yourself. And if you have any doubt, any question, we will have a question answer session at the end of the lecture. So you all are who are having any doubt or question are requested to raise the hand. There is an option in the toolbar to raise hand. You should raise your hand and we'll give chance to one by one to all, and all the queries of all the participants will try to get solved. So in between, please, you all are requested to be muted. Secondly, we'll share the feedback link to all the participants via email or via WhatsApp group. So you all are requested to give your sincere feedback to us for our upgradation. Now I request our keynote speaker, Dr. Tosniwal sir, to please start with your session. Over to Tosniwal sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Praveen Kumar. I will just share my screen. At the outset, am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. At the outset, I would like to thank Honorable Pro-Chancellor Sir and Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir to deliver this keynote webinar on systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Also, I am really thankful to Dr. Sangeeta Madam, Dean Academics College of Physiotherapy, and Dr. Neeraj Kumar Sir, Professor and Head at Orthopedic Physiology, for introducing me. And with these few words, we will start immediately with our presentation. I would also like to thank all the participants who have joined this webinar locally and nationally. Blessings to all of you from the holy place of Sri Sai Baba, Shirdi. My respected teachers who led my path in education, academics, with a deep gratitude, I start this presentation. Today we are going to learn about systematic reviews and meta-analysis. I know that few of the final year physiotherapy students are also attending this webinar. So I have divided this topic into 3 parts. Initial 10 minutes will be given an emphasis why to learn, why to know about evidence-based healthcare science. Then later we are going to see how these systematic reviews and meta-analysis will be helpful to all of us in our day-to-day clinical practice. And the last part of the session will give you in brief some of the ideas in physiotherapeutic sciences where certain systematic reviews and meta-analysis from the physiotherapeutic journals will be enumerated. Though I am not an expert in physiotherapist, but I'll try my level best to summarize the evidence-based healthcare sciences as an physiotherapist to all of you. This presentation comes to you from Pravara Institute of Medical Sciences. where we all constituent colleges, we teach our student the basics, that is problem based learning and evidence based solution, especially for the rural poor. Now, when you start using an word and evidence based healthcare services, we all are a busy academicians, we all are busy clinicians, and every minute the new articles are getting published in the worldwide net journals, digital platforms, and the physical format. Many of the times it becomes so difficult to upgrade ourselves with such an widely published literature and unpublished literature. So what we do, we see our clinical experience, we read what we are supposed to read, but even if we start reading everything, it will be impossible for everyone to get the current knowledge thoroughly. So let us see how these evidence-based healthcare services will help all of us. Now this picture classically represents the ascent of evidence in last 3 decades. Initially, we had a books and journals which are very few in number, but see the today's position of a doctor where there is an exponential growth of information available on digital platform. He is really very confused that which has to be read, which has to be taken into consideration, and how much to read and how much to cope up with the current knowledge. So this confused doctor is doesn't know that many of the studies they conflict the clinical observation led by him, and it creates the misunderstanding about the literature and the science to his mind. But to solve this problem, the saddest aspect of the life right now is that science gathers knowledge faster than the society gathers the wisdom. So that is what is the scientific truth today. Now, in an evidence-based clinical decision, the most important equation is that knowledge plus experience is equal to expertise. You will be known as clinically expertise only when you have a very sound evidence-based knowledge plus you have got a good clinical experience. Now, regarding the knowledge, once you are passed out from the institute, many few of them they join the institute back, but many of them they start a direct private practice. So the knowledge which you have gained is getting changing every day, every minute, every month, every year. So the knowledge which you are carrying may get out of dated. Then it is very difficult to cope up with the new ideas and concept with the published literature, and then acquisition of the new knowledge which is very slow and haphazard by the current practitioners. So as an expertise, you need to keep the knowledge update, but the time in clinical practice doesn't permit us to read all the documents and to give an evidence-based decision to our patient. So where these evidence-based healthcare services will help you. Secondly, an experience. If you are freshly passed out, you may have got limited clinical experience. This experience may be subject to an personal bias, and if you carry a good knowledge, you may become an expertise. But if you don't read thoroughly every day with an concept, that is learn, unlearn, and relearn, then you cannot be called it as an expertise. Now, why one should be aware about these evidence-based health services? Because nowadays, the patients, they challenge your decisions, our decisions, because they are aware. They have got an access of information about the procedures which you are going to follow on them. They know the cost risk benefit analysis ratio, and this litigious society demands an expertise from you and may challenge your decision in certain rare situation where you need to stand in front of the law of court. Then what is a challenge in front of us? we should have the best current evidence on a disease or a deformity and the treatment protocols which we are going to give it to the patient. We should know about the evidence. Then the next question is how to look for this. That is what is we are going to see today. Then we are going to see all the evidences, whether they are valid or invalid, and then how to apply these evidences to our day-to-day clinical practice. Now, how does it work? This evidence-based health practice mainly take into consideration the patient's values and preferences into consideration and gives us a scientific foundation to complement our skills to lead to an efficient and effective diagnosis. So we are correct at our side as an expertise. Why to practice and why to teach? Simply because we as a healthcare professional owe to it to our patient to provide the currently best care available. Patient may ask you, what is the best modality nowadays available worldwide for my deformity? You should know it. Then you need to prepare as an academician, you need to prepare our student with lifelong learning skills. Most important, the learning never stops in institute. Every day in life teaches us a new lesson. So it is a lifelong learning skill so that you can continue yourself, evaluate yourself and use the current information for your patient. And that is what we consider it as our professional responsibility. In a nutshell, the evidence-based practices is nothing but an integration of three things. The first is the best available external evidence which you have on your digital platform or the book and current journals. Then you are supposed to listen to a patient's values and expectation. When we record the case history, we record the chief complaint of the patient. And when we ignore that, that means we are not the correct practitioner. And then we need to utilize our individual clinical expertise to deliver the our treatment protocol to the patient. So this evidence-based healthcare services is not a local event. It of course is a global event which is changing the mindset of practitioners, which is allowing the faculty to develop themselves. It is a policy implementation in many organizations and university, which doesn't need special infrastructure, but needs sharing of an data and information. And the most important is creation of an electronic library. All of you have got the electronic devices with you in form of mobiles, laptops, computers. So you need to carry your own electronic library, in short, and Bhagavad Gita of your subject when you start the private practice, and you need to upgrade that library at least once in a week, not on a daily basis. Now, this is a cycle of knowledge. Whatever I am delivering today may not be true in afternoon or evening or may feel and wrong tomorrow morning. So one should know about the cycle of knowledge where we all as a researchers generate the research question. Then we gather the information on that research question through the current knowledge. Let it be a systematic review, which we are going to see later on. We conduct the new clinical trial or randomized control trial, and then we upgrade the systematic review, and the next research question is generated for the next researcher. Now in evidence-based healthcare systems, we all know that there is a grading system. There are levels of evidences, and where you can see in this chart, the expert opinion, that means an opinion of a particular doctor, it lies at the bottom. That does not mean that doctor is doing something wrong, but perhaps his knowledge may not be applicable to the mass number of people in reference to the benefit and the cost. Then you, as you go upwards, you have got case control studies, cohort studies, RCTs, CCTs, but what lies on the top is the systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So when you support your clinical treatment with the current systematic reviews and meta-analysis available in the published literature, then you will be known as an clinically expertise physiotherapist. So, in nutshell, evidence-based healthcare services is all about the most important thing, doing the right thing to the right patient in the right way at a right time at a right cost in the right place. This is should be an objective of us today. Let us go back to an history. In 18th century, the healthcare literature was not there. People used to share the healthcare informations on one-to-one basis while discussing with their mutual discussions. There were no texts and journals. But in 19th century, the learning was still experimental, but the texts and journals appears in the science and there was a synthesis of knowledge on these grounds. But the 20th century has led to the synthesis of literature review, which I hope you have learned in last webinar, that is knowledge generated through experimentation began to replace than the personal experience. But then we are in a 21st century and the hallmark of this stage is generation of systematic reviews and meta-analysis, and that is my topic today. Now, this meta-analysis and systematic reviews, what they do, they rapidly disseminate the evidence over the electronic media. They allow an access of evidences to healthcare practitioner to see that they upgrade their knowledge easily, very fastly, and with a very minimum expenses. And again, this gives an information to general public also and interested patient. So the most important thing is that if the patient is literate, he knows what is an evidence-based healthcare information. Now these evidence-based studies, they follow certain basic steps like framing a question, finding the evidence, appraising it, applying it, assessing the outcome, and summarizing and storing the records. The first one is framing of a question for a systematic review. That is, one need to formulate a very focused research question which should be relevant to that topic, which should be clinically important question, and this should be in a PICO format, that is population, intervention, comparison and outcome. This is what the researchers they know nowadays when they carry out the systematic review. So in short, it is why, who, how, what, when, where, so many questions. The step 2 is where to get an evidence. The primary research and secondary research. You may find an evidence in unpublished articles in journals and also some unpublished research work which we called it as a grey literature. While the secondary research, which is most important for us today, is the systematic reviews and meta-analysis. This hierarchy of evidence, when the lot of published literature is there, the library is flooded with thousands of texts and journals, and even if you start reading every of the subject of your interest, you may take your life to read it. Then where we need to go for that? In the evidence-based pyramid, you will find that on the top of an Mount Everest lies the systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So even in any journals, any evidence-based healthcare sciences or in Cochrane collaboration, if you search for systematic review and meta-analysis pertaining to your topic of an interest and the area of your diagnosis and treatment protocol, that will give you an correct evidence on an application to the clinical settings. Then you need to appraise that evidence. This is generally done with a CAT principle, that is critically appraised topic, a practical approach. Then the next step is you need to take an clinical judgment of your own patient. You need to utilize your experience. You need to see the patient's expectations and values, apply the evidence, assess the outcome, and store the records of that particular patient and case study for your future reference. Now, one should know about the world's foremost leader in systematic reviews and meta-analysis is nothing but the Cochrane collaboration. The Cochrane collaboration is the world's foremost leader in systematic reviews and meta-analysis in healthcare sciences, which avoid and omit the information bias, the confirmative bias, the publication bias, and selection bias. What do you mean by an information bias? Information bias is nothing but we as a practitioner may be lack in information about the current knowledge. But many of the time what we do, we try to support our information by reading only few articles in the books and journals, and we try to confirm our findings. That is nothing but an confirmative bias. Many of the time nowadays the journal quality concerns, they are more important to us when we select the studies. Many of the journals they publish only those studies which give the significant result to their problem, and the studies which are not significant results may be omitted from the publication, so that becomes the publication bias. And then what is an selection bias is that we try to select only those studies which can confirm our finding, and we ignore those studies which doesn't confirm our findings. So this Cochrane collaboration has been formed by Dr. Archie Cochrane, a British medical researcher who contributed a lot in development of an epidemiology as a science. It is one man's medicine. The aim of Cochrane learning is to reduce the ever increasing volume of both published and unpublished research literature on a specific topic into manageable, unbiased, and quality assessed portions. This Cochrane collaboration has got many different review groups, and amongst them more popular for dental or oral health group, or for an physiotherapist is a Cochrane physiotherapeutic health group. Now this is based on your garbage in and garbage out label, that is GIGO label, which we have seen, that is need to avoid selection bias and publication bias, which ultimately will omit informative bias and confirmative bias. The most important tool which you all should know as a clinician and researcher is a great translation tool, that is nothing but a grading of recommendation, assessment, development, and evaluation. This translation tool helps in translating the scientific evidence for clinical practice. That is a venture of this systematic review, which gives you a strength of recommendation based on quality of evidences, values and preferences of the patient, cost and benefits to an patient, and of course maximum benefit with minimum risks and balanced desirable effect. Now these systematic reviews and meta-analysis, once they are formulated and published, it is not the last mean. You need to upgrade them. You need to revise them. And that's why they are known as living document. That means they get updated regularly, and the minimum period of upgradation may be an week and month, but the maximum is 2 years. So if you have read any systematic reviews and meta-analysis 2 years back, it is not the today's correct evidence. You need to reread it. Now, the learning objective for today is that to know about systematic reviews and meta-analysis, the differences between the literature review and systematic reviews, types of systematic reviews and meta-analysis. That will ultimately will teach you an evidence-based guidelines for your writing the systematic review protocol, searching of the literature, exploring the result, checking the duplication, and then it will give you a strategy for abstract screening and applying that knowledge to the clinical practice. Now let us start with the basics. What is systematic review? The systematic review are the types of literature reviews that collect and critically analyze multiple research studies on paper using methods that are selected before one and more research questions are formulated, and then finding and analyzing the study that relate to and answers to those questions in a structured methodology. So in short, you need to generate the research question. It should be very structured and meticulous. Then you need to find the studies. You need to select the studies. You need to aggregate the studies with a similar material and methods. And ultimately, you need to the procedure of an systematic review. These are nothing but the synopsis of an existing evidence on specific topic. They give you a means to keep up with the numerous articles published annually in every field. It concentrates on a very specific, narrow, clinically relevant question. It is written by a team of experts, and there is very minimum bias or no bias when writing these systematic reviews. Nowadays, there are so many published systematic reviews on a single research question. So the new concept has started that is known as systematic review of systematic reviews. Then, in short, it summarizes the literature, minimizes the bias, gives you more power for an evidence-based clinical practice. Then there must be a question in your mind that why I should not use any high quality, well-designed single study rather than a systematic reviews. No, the single study will not give you a perfect answer because almost about 32% of a set of studies with at least 1,000 citations were either contraindicated or reported stronger effects than the subsequent studies. So what are the steps in generating a systematic review? This is nothing but to formulate the research question, then to have an inclusion and exclusion criteria in material and method for the particular selected studies. Then you need to search the literature. After searching the literature, you may get hundreds of the study which you need to screen them for quality assessment. Then once you totally screen them, then you need to combine those materials methods to a desired research question to narrate the steps in systematic reviews. So the first step is nothing but to define the research question. The researcher must first decide what research question they need to an answer, and it should be very specific. It should not be a vague question, ultimately will lead to wrong decision. The step 2 is eligibility criteria. It is decided by research question. It is decided well in advance which study to be included and included by the team leaders, and the study should be very systematic in form of RCT, CCT, having a correct research design. Then once the studies are included, the search should be made in the published literature for an available attempts to reveal the unpublished literature too. Many of the time, we can go on a PubMed and Medline only for unpublished literature, but there are so much evidences that there are non-English unpublished literatures which we term it as a grey literature, but we need to take into consideration that also. Then searching electronic database for systematic reviews requires balance between sensitivity and precision. These are the two important words. And when we come to an Cochrane systematic reviews for a world's foremost leader, they attempt to aim for maximum sensitivity so that no relevant articles are missed. So that are the two principles of systematic reviews, sensitivity and precision. Then The question is that how to search the database. A search is usually through the medical database, that is nothing but the Medline and MLess, and trials and systematic review information with the Cochrane library as a minimum resource. The Medline is a resource from United States based at National Library of Medicine. Records dates back to 1950, having 5,000 journals with the billions of citations. Currently 16 million citation in 37 languages and has a well-researched reputation as the most comprehensive medical science database. See the amount of literature. Is it possible for someone to read? Of course not in this life. Then next is an Embase. It is an European equivalent of Medline based in Netherlands, and it has a coverage of 7,000 journals since 50 years, having 20 million citations. Again, an impossible task for everyone. So next is non-English language literature. Beside this Medline Embase, they are English literatures. But in the world, we have got a healthcare information in Japanese language, German language, Chinese language, and one of the largest non-English database is a Latin. And one should know about this, because unless and until you gathered the information for that particular research question in all the published literature, then it will be biased if you select only English as a language. Then data has been taken from the study that meet our predetermined eligibility criteria, and data may have to come from variety of formats. So now the risk of bias assessment is very minimum in systematic review and meta-analysis. The primary aim is to minimize the bias and give the maximum output, and the data is analyzed with this particular statistical analysis and conclusion has been made. Then assessing the publication bias has already been omitted. This may lead to mispresentation or misinterpretation. So you need to avoid the publication bias. And the final result of this systematic review is the summarize, and decision makers can use this published outcome. Then what is the difference in short between a literature review and systematic review? In webinar 3 and webinar 4, the systematic reviews are highly evidence-based. They follow the systematic steps. They are with a low bias. They are reproducible and they have got a wide scope. What does it mean? We need to follow them. This is an bottom-down approach while generating the systematic reviews. You can see a funnel diagram. On the top of it, you have a research question. You are searching for studies. You are selecting the studies. You are including and excluding the studies. You are assessing the quality of the studies. You are assessing the material and methods of the study. You are looking for homogeneity of the study, because heterogeneity cannot combine the study. Then data can be combined to form an analysis, either systematic or meta-analysis. Now, for example, you have gotten 15 to 100 studies with a minimum number of sample size on each study on same research question with same material and method. That gives you a larger sample size to come to a larger statistical conclusion and more evidence-based fact. Now, the advantages of systematic review is that they gives you a definite answer for a particular question. It helps the busy physiotherapist or doctor to understand the latest developments. It basically identifies the knowledge gap that call for more research. The conclusion of reviews are more reliable than those of an individual studies. The systematic reviews minimizes the bias when scientists reach conclusion. The mathematical power and precision is very high, and these systematic reviews also offer practical advantages. They are less costly to carry out and easy to read and easy to store for the new experiments. There must be some disadvantages if proper protocol has not been followed, which may lead to some sort of unbiased thing, where researcher may include only few study and omit other, where researcher himself is in biased or he has not understood the procedure correctly, when he includes the publication bias into an process, giving the negative results, and that will ultimately will not lead to an correct systematic review. So one need to follow the correct procedure. Let us come to an meta-analysis as a tool for evidence-based practice. Meta-analysis represent the quantitative aspect while systematic reviews are qualitative aspect. Meta-analysis is a statistical method for quantitative evidence synthesis in which eligible studies are pulled together in meta-analysis model to give an overall effective size with a greater power. That means meta-analysis are very powerful. These are the highest level of evidence-based procedures and analysis available in the world today, which overall increases the sample size by combining the data from individual study, increases the statistical power of analysis, and leads to an precision to assess the treatment effect. So the highest level of analysis. If you look to an history, they are not new. In 17th century, astronomists have used the meta-analysis. While the first use of an meta-analysis in healthcare sciences way back 100 years with a Carl Pearson in British Medical Journal. The history of meta-analysis has been very nicely discussed 80 years back on a book known as Extrasensory Perception After 60 Years by an author who are psychologists, that is Pratt and Ryan. The term meta-analysis was coined by Jean Glass, and the term is a bit grand, but it is a precise and apt. Meta-analysis is nothing but study of studies, and this is nothing but analysis of analysis. What are the levels in meta-analysis? In the first proposal, he proposed 3 levels, that is primary analysis, that is original statistical analysis of the data collected by the researcher. In secondary analysis, this is an analysis of the data by someone other than researcher, while in meta-analysis, it is nothing but statistical analysis of a data of several independent studies which are considered to be combinable. This word is more important because when you start combining the results of the studies and material methods of the studies for meta-analysis, all these studies should have a common research question, should have similar material and method, sample size may vary, but should have the same research question in mind. So the differences between meta-analysis is nothing but logical framework analysis. Now, this is what is systematic review is nothing but qualitative data synthesis, while meta-analysis is quantitative data synthesis. In systematic review, there is no statistical analysis, while in meta-analysis, statistical analysis is mandatory. Meta-analysis combines the study. Systematic review may take months to year, but the meta-analysis is very short procedure which may take weeks to month. And meta-analysis is generally be on general topic on specific question, while systematic review needs the PICO format only. Now the purpose of meta-analysis is to summarize a large and complex amount of literature on a specific topic to result into a conflicting report with a smaller size, to quantify and clarify the strength and weaknesses, that is SWOT analysis of all the various studies in a specific research field, to avoid the time and expenses of conducting a major clinical trial, and ultimately it increases the statistical power of analysis which combines the data from many smaller studies. So the quantitative synthesis of literature that addresses specific research question more efficient to summarize large bodies of literature. That means thousands of the studies can be combined together for the one common conclusion, and that gives us a new direction for further research. That is the strength of meta-analysis. So this meta-analysis reading and synthesis is recommended in many non-conclusive studies having small effect. Then you add all those studies of similar kind to get a conclusive report and a larger effect. And this can be performed on an urgent basis and doesn't need much more time. It gives you an safety, and it helps you in indication and contraindication of utilizing particular results. But there are certain contraindications of meta-analysis also when the conflict of interest get generated before drug approval and registration, when an attempt has been made by an editorial team to give an irrelevant and an important effect combining numerous insignificant studies. So that is the mistake by an editorial board. So controversial issues are also there in meta-analysis, that many of the time you don't find a quality study. When you find a quality study, there may be a selection and publication bias. And more importantly, the quality study publication on particular research questions are very minimum, even though there is a last published literature in the world. Heterogenesis is, it reduces your quality. Then study quality and bias has to be very correct, and these has to be omitted with a thorough editorial process. So conducting and meta-analysis is a protocol definition is there, where you need to avoid all these limitations and disadvantage. These are the procedure recommended by the Cochrane database before formulating the meta-analysis and systematic reviews, which one should know from a Cochrane library. There are methods of formulating the meta-analysis through an literature. That is step 1, step 2, that is time period of literature which you are searching. Incomplete search will lead to selection bias. Then you need to formulate the correct research question. Then you need to synthesize the databases through midline, embase and other. Then you need to cross-check them with a science citation index. Then checking the investigators, granting agencies, conflict of interest, then going to a Cochrane library, finding the database pertaining to question, going to other authentic sites, going to non-published literatures, and finally plotting the funnel plot analysis to reduce the measures in publication bias. So studies with a larger sample size are affected less than studies with a smaller sample size. And the most commonly employed method in meta-analysis is a funnel plot, which employs law of larger samples. So symmetric funnel plots indicate a possible absence of bias. Then the test for asymmetric bias, they are there in the literature. If there is something asymmetric funnel plot, then you should go for a Bankstead, Eager test, and so many other statistical tests with a log odds ratio. Selection bias can be confirmed with the test having the same hypothesis with same outcome, similar patient with similar intervention, and quality control in data collection and calculation of Cohen's kappa, which eliminates the inter-reviewer agreements. There are three main ways for risk of bias assessment. The first one is the scales, which is Downs and Black scale and other scales. Second is checklist, most preferably is a PRISMA, that is prefer reporting atoms for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And then individual component approach, that is Cochrane risk of bias tool. Data extraction and statistical procedures with a forest plot includes head counting, that is number of studies, Hot counting, this is more important, that is the p-value of each study, and forest plot for an odd ratio. The Cochrane learning has given a systematic process for systematic reviews and meta-analysis, which includes title registration, assignment of reviewer, review number, contact editor, review protocol, developing a protocol, then internal peer review by Cochrane, editorial team, comment, then external referee comment, then again comment feedback to authors and contact editors, publication in the Cochrane library through internal and external peer review through managing editor, and then author can undertake this systematic review in published literature, completes the review, again is goes for 2 rounds of peer review. Again, comments are fed back to an author and contact editor. Review is revised as applicated and submitted to the managing editor for the publication in Cochrane library, where the review is updated at an appropriate interval. So if one need to follow all this meticulous space, it will lead to incorrect systematic reviews and meta-analysis. The number of reports currently listed in Cochrane registers goes more than 25,000, making this register a highly valuable resource to all those who identify the RCTs and CCTs in the physiotherapeutic sciences. So as a professional and a student, you can register on a Cochrane database library where new records had been added to trial register are updated quarterly to the central database of clinical trials and is published in a Cochrane library. The database included in the Cochrane library is nothing but Cochrane database of systematic reviews, CDSR, database of abstract of reviews and effects, that is DARE, then Cochrane central registration of control trial, that is central, Cochrane methodology register, CMR, health technology assessment database, HTA, NHS economic evaluation database, and about the Cochrane collaboration. The Cochrane library is published quarterly by Wiley InterScience. It is available on a subscription basis online or on DVD-ROM. Individual reviews are also available on pay-per-view basis. But the most important thing is that we as a doctors from India or the residents of the countries in the world which comes to an low socioeconomic standards in World Bank list, this Cochrane database is available free of charge to all residents and countries, and one need to log on this Cochrane website, register and find out an evidence for your current research question, and that is nothing but the Cochrane Learning, which very soon in a university we are going to launch it. Recent developments have included the production of audio summaries and podcasts to selected reviews from Cochrane Library and initiation of Cochrane Journal Clubs for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. The need to communicate current research finding of the highest level more effectively is becoming imperative in influencing clinical practice in 21st century. While research sets central tendency, individual variation favors interpretation of evidence for more effective, efficient, stable, and predictable treatment. So when there is thousands of reviews getting published, one need to use commercially available software for the formulation of meta-analysis. As time does not permit me to discuss them in detail, let us know them. Freely available software for meta-analysis and the current systematic reviews in the health of the in the form of an physiotherapeutic science. Let us see what are those in short, because there are many more, but I am not an correct expert to summarize them. I have summarized in last 3 years the important systematic reviews and meta-analysis from physiotherapeutic journals. As in lockdown period, I was not accessible to our central library. I have searched through and databases. Let us see and first systematic reviews, which is on type 1 diabetes, where exercise has been promoted. So what does it concludes? That when you do a particular exercise in type 1 diabetes, it reduces its severity in form of body mass index, insulin dose, waist circumference, and triglyceride levels in children. Let us take another review on exercise on and social participation of an individual with Down syndromes. Exercise was supported for both daily life activities and social participation with these patients and provided a good result. That means a physiotherapist can give an exercise tool to the patients having a Down syndrome. Let us take a non-pharmacological intervention of spasticity in adult. concludes that high quality of evidences for many modalities, but further research is needed to judge the appropriate effects of the treatment. Coming to an aerobic exercises given to reduce the blood pressure, it has been concluded that these exercises reduces blood pressure post stroke and transient ischemic attack are safe and contributed clinically in the reduction of blood pressure and beneficial in controlling the lipid profile. Coming to an physical therapy for bruxism patient which clench and grinds the teeth in the night, the systematic review concludes that certain exercises and splints are useful to an individual having an bruxism to reduce anxiety, stress, and temporomandibular joint disorders. Coming to an intervention by a physiotherapist in chronic pelvic pain, it concludes that the evidence needs a more quality result as there is a heterogeneity of the studies in the literature. So you need to work on more on it and find the qualitative study to reduce the chronic pelvic pain. Then management of persistent headaches associated with neck pain. So it has been concluded that you should follow proper guidelines for exercise and massage with proper relief of persistent headache associated with the neck pain. The next systematic review is based on rehabilitation to improve exercise capacity and quality of life in pulmonary arterial hypertension. These are what the conclusions in the forced vital capacity of a lung, improvement in oxygen saturation level. I think so it will be more beneficial in COVID-19 today. Then there are certain orofacial myotherapeutic exercises for the patients having asthma and rhinitis, which controls their snoring, especially in obstructive sleep apnea, and gives a more evidence-based expertise to them. Coming to an intervention in smoking cessation, it needs a good quality studies to have a proper access to the amount of evidence available in the literature. There is a modest benefit of an exercise to quit the smoking. Then use of physiotherapy in nursing home internationally has concluded that the development of physiotherapy benchmarks and quality standards are needed to support older adults in nursing home. That means with an increasing age, you need to take a more nursing care than a young age. Exercise individuals having neurological disorders, it balances the motor and sensory performances with improved decreased risk of fall. That means there is definitely improvement in patients' cognitive improvement and dementia. Exercise training with patients with pulmonary hypertension has concluded that you can maintain the pulmonary blood pressure with optimal drug and good exercise protocol. Message for pain massage is also supplemented with systematic reviews and meta-analysis for the benefit of the same. So, coming to a summary and conclusion, the contemporary physiotherapist must always be intellectually prepared himself for the transformation of his specialty. The challenge for healthcare professional is that a major step change is required to increase the scale and quality of clinical trials and to increase the professionals' collective will to become truly evidence-based. It is our will. We should have a will to learn the evidence-based science. Always the responsibility should come for an active participation of members of Physiotherapy Association on the EBHS platform plus physiotherapy institutions and research universities. When a dream will come true, when this type of research are uses in real patient in real practice to learn which technique works best. So that needs the participation of academicians and clinicians as a joint venture, and as a research school and professional organization, one need to conduct the hands-on workshop, group discussion, champion performance and networking to follow the systematic review workshops and meta-analysis workshop. Nowadays, UGC and council guidelines also supports the professional organization and health university to conduct these value-added program and certificate courses. So university departments clearly have a significant role in educating today's student to become critical selective practitioners of tomorrow. Likewise, university will have an ongoing role in developing and coordinating research. Lasting partnership between academic researchers and network of practitioners in the real world are now essential to achieve appropriately powered studies that will yield conclusions that can be generated to everyday circumstances. So it is a joint venture between practitioners and we as a researchers and teachers. Journal can raise the quality and reporting of trials by insisting on adherence to consort checklist, but the real responsibility for promoting and fostering research should fall on the profession as a whole, led by its national and international representative bodies. So, in a perfect world, one needs to have town and gown approach where we have made the enemy and we are the only one that he is us. So we need to broaden our mind, we need to search for literature, and we need to go for an evidence-based healthcare practice. So with this, I thank the APJ Abdul Kalam University Dean Academic Madam and Professor Head to give me an opportunity. As a last minute opportunity, I tried my level best to summarize the topic in limited time. I hope it may give you an outline. It is not a complete session. Learning the systematic reviews and meta-analysis may need days and weeks together, but it is a small attempt to pen down, at least learn the evidence-based healthcare physiotherapy practices, read systematic reviews and meta-analysis, and employ them in your specialty as an clinically expertise concept. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Toshniwal sir. What a wonderful, resourceful lecture this was. I hope all the participants will get very much enlightened with this systematic review and meta-analysis. Now, the participants, if you have any doubt or if you have any question, I request you to please raise your hand. There is a raise hand option in the toolbar menu. So one by one, we'll give chance to all the question. So those who have any doubt, please raise your hand and we'll give the, we will ask the person for their question. The participants, if you have any doubt, please raise your hand.
क्वेश्चन दे से कटे
Yes. Diksha Age. You can unmute yourself and you can ask your question. Diksha, you can unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. So my question is how to analyze the qualitative articles quality to know the for the systematic review.
Okay, Diksha. Your question is pertaining to the assessment of quality studies for quality assessment of the studies for systematic reviews. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the first thing is that when you search for an quality studies, you need to have at least minimum PubMed index journal or the journals having high impact factor and having maximum citation for that particular study. Then try to read the research question whether it matches to you. Then read the materials and methods very meticulously. Sometimes the research question may be common, but the material and method and sample may be heterogeneous. So then when there is an heterogeneity, you can't take into consideration. So you need to search only those studies having the same sample for example, a particular disorder, particular age group, having a same material and method utilized, and then is giving an quality output with an appropriate sample size. Initially, you may screen little bit more studies, For example, for a particular research question, you may have got a 50 to 100 studies. Then again, you need to screen the screen studies and come to an minimum studies having answering your research question and giving you an quality output, because at the end of every published paper, there is a conflict of interest, there are limitations, and there is something which is known as statistical power. So you need to be very thorough in analyzing the results before combining them. I hope with a practice, it may take a little bit of a longer practice to scrutinize the quality studies for formulating the systematic reviews. It's becoming difficult for us even after 10-20 years to identify the correct, but we try to make it. Then we can submit this data to Cochrane database. They will guide you that whether you have included correctly or wrongly, or whether you have missed one or you need to add something more.
All right. The
Thank you,
next, Sakshi Jain, you can unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, how many articles we need to study in the systemic reviews, and are there any repetitions or standard number for the same?
There is no standard number, Sakshi. You need to search maximum articles having a similar research question with a high quality concern checklist on that. You have a certain guidelines given by editorial team. Let it be you go to an Cochrane website, you see the steps to be followed for generating a systematic review. If you wish to write a certain systematic review and formulate it, then you need to follow their procedures of an editorial team, because we as an initial learner may make certain mistakes in selecting and abbreviating the studies in form of informative bias, confirmative bias, publication bias, and selection bias. So this joint venture should be there. You should not be alone. You should be monitored by some editorial team who are highly expertised in Cochrane learning, who have attended the workshops and tutorials in that. Then only it is possible to conduct the correct systematic review. So I would like to suggest all the participants to attend the online Cochrane learning sessions, that is the group discussions, the webinars on Cochrane website, read the physiotherapy literature on Cochrane database. There is a separate group of researchers in Cochrane database for physiotherapy as a science. Mail them your difficulties, try to learn, upgrade, and then formulate the research question and resubmit. And always I feel that a single person cannot find a systematic review. He needs an quality background in form of experienced researchers, teachers, academicians, and have a scientific database which is available on the electronic sites.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Jasmine Sheikh, you can unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, being a final year student, will it be difficult to start a systematic review as an intern next year?
It will not be. You start with a very simple basic research question which you have learned as a clinical expertise in final year. And first of all, what you do, you try to read the systematic reviews available to your particular patient in the published literature, gather them, and try to combine the systematic reviews available. It will be known as systematic review of systematic reviews, and that will answer your question. And then you can become a master once you continue this mission and vision in your life. Still, I am a learner in this. I can't say I'm an expert, but I need to upgrade myself also daily if I have to remain as a challenge in this evidence-based area.
Yes, sir.
Any other question from any other participants?
Yes, sir. Deepali.
Nisarg Kote. Okay, Dipali.
So,
Please
excuse me,
unmute.
sir. Is there any online platform for which gives a tutorial for conducting systematic reviews?
Yes, I already have given the website of Cochrane database, which is freely available for Indian residents. You can log on into it and you express your wish to join the team as an initial learner. Then they will give you certain guideline articles to read. Then you can participate in their small group discussion, which we called it as a focus group discussion through and video conferencing with the same level of the students like you. Then they will tell you that you need to read further, you learn further, you need to attend certain tutorials. Then you can go and attend this by paying the minimum amount of the fees if there anything is there, and then you can become an expertise in that. So actually, as an initial learner, we need an help from an evidence-based healthcare databases, and I will recommend that world's foremost and best distributor for systematic reviews and meta-analysis is Cochrane Collaboration. If you give and document in a court of law in front of an justice that whatever the Cochrane Collaboration has concluded in this database, that I have done for my patient, and that is what is the best evidence available in the world as on today, the judge will listen to that and will give a judgment based on the Cochrane collaboration outcome. So that is what is the impact of learning evidence based through Cochrane collaboration.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Dipali ma'am, please, you can ask your question, Dipali ma'am.
Madam, namaskar.
Unmute.
Good morning. I am not hearing you, madam.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So my
Okay.
device was on mute mode.
Okay.
Sir, first I would like to thank you that in such a short time you have accepted our invitation and systematic review, sir. Just now you said that still you are learning. So for us, we are just a beginner for systematic review. So I was having 2-3 questions about the selection of the articles, sir. So first you said that we should know Latin language because there is lot of material which is available in Latin language. So sir, that
Yes.
is, I feel that it is impossible to learn a new language it's a totally a new language. So if like generally we see the systematic review in which Latin reviews are not available, or they have not included Latin literature. So
This
what to
is
do about that, sir? Or
this
should
is
we
madam,
mention
and
that in a limitation?
we can mention it, madam, but we have to try to search through these Latin languages with an platform that they have been given on Cochrane database. They are translating those languages into an English and giving us a summary.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we can
Yeah, that's good.
see that is we need not have to learn on these languages, but
Right.
whenever you approach any collaboration which is neutral and world's foremost leader like Cochrane collaboration, you can directly put your question. I have selected the studies published in English literature. They may be complete or incomplete. If they are incomplete, kindly add on to that. And I have not seen the Latin or the non-English literature or unpublished or gray literature. There may be thousands of dissertation in the world which has not been published but are of
Right.
good quality. So
Right.
these conference proceedings, unpublished literature, these Midline, Embase and Cochrane, they have got the largest database and electronic library. So on behalf of us, their team will try to search and give it us an informative quality studies, which we can adapt it by mentioning their citation and reference, and we can communicate with them, and then we can generate a systematic review. And we can't say that our review is perfect. We need to submit and submit it again. In 3-4 you will 3-4 sessions you will be depressed that I am doing so much hard but they are not responding, but according to them we are just the beginner, so we need to
Right.
be a very meticulous and consistent in answering the question.
Okay. So, sir, can we do like when we are doing it for the first time, we can have more exclusion criteria so that limited number of studies we can include in our systematic review?
That we can, madam, but that will reduce the statistical power because the sample size will get reduced, and we don't know
Okay.
whether that studies which we have selected from a journal which are highly
Uh,
reputed having a good H index, VC sir has
right.
explained us, and the
Right.
impact
Right.
factor.
Yes, sir.
So if we
Yes, sir.
try to omit the studies, then this cannot be considered as systematic review. It is just a literature
Okay.
review. You need not
Okay.
have to omit unless and until you don't know only.
Okay. So
Okay.
sub question to this is, generally we tell the students that you need to include the studies which are recent studies. So for a systematic review, do we have any criteria that the studies which were published in last 5 years or studies which were published in last 10 years that we have to include?
There is nothing such guideline, madam. On the
Okay.
contrary, I would like to suggest that the more we go to the older journals, like in
Huh?
orthodontics in library, we have got a journals 100 years back. So
Hmm.
those in those
Hmm.
days, they were the original research. They were not duplicated. There was no digital database available, and I still
Right.
feel that as old is gold, you should incorporate the older studies at least if it matches with your research question.
Hmm. 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 So
Okay,
one last
weightages,
question.
weightage should be given to old studies, madam. We can't forget the older
Huh.
research published in the literature.
Yeah, because to our postgraduate student, we tell them that if they are including 15 years back reference, we are telling that don't take that because we need to have a recent one. So I just thought to
Sometimes,
ask
madam,
this.
there are chances that we may miss the original studies, and
Right,
then the students, their basic may not be clear, madam. Sometimes they know very advanced thing, and if you ask them to perform certain basic procedure and basic
right,
diagnosis, they don't do it, madam. So,
right.
according to me, the basic is very must, madam.
Yes, sir. Sir, and one last question. So this problem generally faced by Indian researchers, that there are a lot of studies which are paid, the articles which are paid when we
Uh,
see. So
that
generally
is,
only
madam, the
abstract is
selection bias, publication bias, information bias, and conformative bias. Now, when
okay.
you try to select a journal, as sir has told that whether it is in UGC listed journal or whether they are Endoscopus and other PubMed journals, actually we
Right,
should
sir.
restrict it to the PubMed, Medline and Embase, and we should check that this journal is an authentic journal. This paid
Hmm.
journal, they just accept your publication within 2-3 days, they publish, they don't check, and they may misinterpret the result in systematic review. So as far as possible, please try to
Sir,
exclude.
I'm not asking about that. I'm asking about the articles which are published in PubMed, but they are paid articles. So when we want to retrieve or when we want to
if
study that
they
article,
if
only
they
abstract is available.
if if they lastly conclude the conflict of interest, if it is no conflict of interest or no financial support for giving particular conclusion, then we can accept that.
Okay, okay,
Otherwise,
sir.
if there is some sponsorship has been taken from some drug company or there is a conflict of interest, then that
Hmm.
may give a false true interpretation.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam.
Next question goes to Hernan Cortez. Please unmute yourself and you can ask your question. Hernan Cortez.
Good, good afternoon for everyone. I am Mr. Hernan Cortez Labao, and I am from Malaysia.
Good
I'm
afternoon,
also
Haman.
yes. Good afternoon, sir. I would like to commend our well-esteemed speaker for a very good discussion this afternoon. Uh, I am also an honorary member of the Indian Collaboration for Clinical Research. Um, and I am very, very happy to be also included in this webinar this afternoon. So mine is not actually a question, but it's more like just a comment regarding the evidence-based practice. with the use of the evidences coming from our literature. Evidence-based practice, all right, based on the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine in Oxford University, stated that evidence-based actually is evidence-based practice is a slippery slope. We are not supposed to think only about the evidences coming from literature, because there are three elements in evidence-based practice, and that would include high-quality clinical research, patient preferences, and practice knowledge. So even if a particular intervention, let's say for example, is highly recommended based on a systematic review or is backed up by a clinical practice guideline, we also need to take into consideration the patient preferences, taking into consideration the cultural context as well as other religious context and personal context of the patient, together with your knowledge as a practitioner. So if it is not matching with our knowledge as a practitioner and our patient's practices, our patient's preferences, then we cannot apply evidences into our local practice, and we have to move on to a different evidences coming from this high quality clinical research articles that will best suit our patient's preferences as well as our practice knowledge. So we have to be very careful in the usage of evidence-based practice, because it is not only about high quality clinical research, but also about patient preferences as well as our clinical expertise or our clinical skills as practitioners. Regarding the other question of one of the participants a while ago regarding the articles that are paid articles. Actually, the thing that we have to do when we are doing, or the first and foremost thing that we have to do when we are doing a systematic review is to register our systematic review. Okay, uh, in terms of what are the details, what are the clinical questions that we would like to answer, and also the databases that we have access with. All right, and also we have to also make sure that we are also going to include all the articles, all right, that are readily available up to this moment, all right, and not only include those articles that are within a specific range of years or that are only written in the English language, just like what Professor has mentioned a while ago, because that will be prone to publication bias. So we have to make sure also that if a particular research article is written in a non-English language, we have to contact, all right, the primary authors for the English translation. We are not supposed to translate it on our own, because that will be subjected to the bias of the systematic reviewers or those who are doing the systematic review. So it's just an added information or an added comment that I would like to share with you. And again, thank you for this wonderful presentation. Thank you for the organizers. And thank you, sir, for a very good discussion about systematic review and meta-analysis. Have a nice afternoon to each and everyone.
Thank you, Herman. It was an wonderful additive comments which you have made. In the beginning, only for first 10-minute presentation, I said a great translation tool where individual preferences, values, and benefits has to look after with the clinical expertise. So thank you for reminding the participant for the same. And I think we can work more together on this platform for upgrading the Malaysian participants and expertise to the College of Physiotherapy and learn more about the systematic reviews and meta-analysis. We are in the beginning steps. We are not at the top. We need to learn from each other, because
Yes, sir.
nothing is available so correctly at any
Correct.
platform. We need to learn, unlearn, and relearn every day,
Correct.
and that will close the partnership between the practitioners and researchers and the academician. It is a joint venture. So I think so with these joint hands, I am not actually an expert of physiotherapeutic science, nor I am an expert in evidence base, but whatever I have learned, read in past 4, 5, 7 years while guiding the PhD student, I tried to summarize this in a last minute webinar session and tried to combine it in a shortest period of time, as these workshops they need a weeks and fortnight to teach to the student to correctly understand us also and to them also.
Thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Hamad.
Now, next question goes to Simple. Simple, you can unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Simple. Your name is Simple, so you will ask me simple question or difficult?
Sir, it will be simple.
It will be simple, okay.
Yes, sir. I wanted to know the limitations for this systemic reviews.
Oh, that already I have summarized. I think Dr. Borkar has got a recording. So there are many limitations when author confront to selection bias, publication bias, informative bias, and confirmative biases. It may take another one lecture to talk on limitation of systematic reviews and meta-analysis. I request you to go through this recording or to the basic books on meta-analysis and systematic reviews, where there are certain limitations if the procedure has not been correctly formulated. So try
Yes.
to select the proper studies, try to confirm everything, only significant result and that include and non-significant result. Don't include, don't do like that. So indication, contraindication, facts and fallacies should be taken into consideration.
Yes, sir.
And sir, we are going to upload this whole session on YouTube also.
Okay. Kindly send me the link also so that I can see my whatever I have taught it to
Yes.
my. Did I did a justice or whether it was in superficial?
No, sir.
Yes, sir, definitely,
Just
sir.
It was very good, sir.
It was a very wonderful session, sir. And is there any other question from any other participants? So I think now it's over. All right. Now, after this very enlightened session, I thank Dr. Tosniwal, sir, for accepting our invitation for this webinar. Now I request Dr. Girija, Assistant Professor in Department of Orthopedic Physiotherapy, to come up with vote of thanks. Now over to Dr. Girija.
Thank you so much, sir. A warm good morning to one and all. I take the privilege of proposing the oath of thanks. I'm extremely humble and honored to thank our Honorable Pro-Chancellor Dr. Rajendra V.K. Patil, sir, and Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Y.M. Jairaj, sir, for permitting us and supporting us in this start of Pravya Physio webinar series. I would also like to thank our webinar chair, Dr. M. Sangeeta Madam, Dean Academic Affairs, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam College of Physiotherapy, for her attention, encouragement, and guidance to this series. In 1970, Alvin Toffler, a futurist, predicted the illiterates of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Learning is a process, and I'm extremely thankful to all the speakers for being a part of this process. I extend my sincere thanks to the speaker for webinar 1 on 4th June, Dr. Bhaskar Reddy, sir, Senior Physiotherapist, King Khalid Hospital, Saudi Arabia, on notifying us on the role and perspective of physiotherapists on COVID-19. I thank the speaker for webinar 2 on 8th June, Dr. Prafulla Herore, sir, Professor in HOD, Department of Orthopedics, Rural Medical College, Pravra, for enlightening us on the basics of orthopedic implants and instruments. I thank our speaker for webinar series 3 on 12 June, the Research Master, Dr. A.P. Kulkarni, sir, ex-Pro Vice Chancellor, MUHS, ex-Director Research, PINS, for easing our search on literature. And I thank our today's speaker, Dr. Toshniwal Nandalal, sir, Professor in HOD, Department of Orthodontics and Dentofacial Orthopedics, Rural Dental College, PINS, for enlightening us on systematic review and meta-analysis. I would also like to extend my thanks to Dr. Rahul Kulkarni, sir, HOD Pharmacology and Director Research, PINS, who was supposed to be a part of this speaker panel but couldn't make it due to the COVID-19 emergencies. We appreciate your support and guidance for the planning and execution, sir. I thank the moderator, Dr. Neeraj Kumar, sir, HOD Department of Orthopedic Physiotherapy, for his motivation and appreciation attitude towards the team. And I thank the organizing team members, Dr. Pradeep, sir, Dr. Supreet ma'am, and Dr. Suraj, sir, for the great teamwork we shared organizing this series. And we all ensure to come back soon with the same passion and zeal. And I also extend my thanks to the teaching and non-teaching faculties of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam College of Physiotherapy for their constant support and feedback after every webinar session. I also thank Mr. Mangesh sir from the Department of Education Communication Media Center PIMS and the most important contributor, the IT department of PIMS, Mr. Mahesh Nande sir, Manager IT, and his team for on-time website updates and to have kept the participants informed through the mails. Special mention Mr. Vikrant Shetge, who never got tired of our queries with respect to the technical aspects. Their team has been a major reason for the smooth conduct of this series. Thank you all once again. And finally, yet importantly, the participants, which included students and professionals across the globe, for your active participation and support to this chat. Hope all the sessions justified your expectations. Thank you once again and keep good health. Thank you all. Over to the moderator.
Thank you, Dr. Girija, for your wonderful vote of thanks. Now I request our webinar chair, Dr. M. Sangeeta ma'am, Dean Academic Affairs of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam College of Physiotherapy, to officially declare this webinar closed. Over to Sangeeta ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Neeraj. And before concluding the session, I would like to share my comments. So first, and a very important thing is, today Nandal sir has explained the systematic review and meta-analysis in a systematic way, which shows his expertise. That is knowledge come experience. So his expertise is stimulant for everyone, including students and beginners and also researchers. So we thank you for that, sir. Thank you very much. And today's take-home message. So few things. So before concluding the session, I would like to tell this also. So, sir, from this session, we understood that teamwork is very important. Teamwork and joint venture is very important in evidence-based science and evidence-based practice. So that is the first thing. And second one, so initiation and conducting the value-added courses and value-added programs and certificate courses in the area of systematic review and meta-analysis. So we would like to start from Physiotherapy College after this session and after the enlightenment from Nandal sir. So we will definitely do this, sir. And I thank all the participants and my special thanks to orthopedic department. They showed their teamwork from the starting to the end of the session. Thank you. And I would also like to thank our fellow colleagues. They also supported the orthopedic department. They gave continuous feedback and we improved from first webinar to the fourth webinar. Thank you all faculties and students also. Thank you very much. And officially I declare that this first webinar series, Pravara Physio webinar series is closing. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And thank you, our eminent speaker, Dr. Toshniwal sir, for sparing his valuable time for us. All the participants, I request you all, will send you a feedback link to all via mail, via WhatsApp group. We request you to kindly give us your feedback to us so that we'll upgrade ourselves in our next venture. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you, speaker. Thank you, webinar chair, and all the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sangeeta madam. Thank you, Praveen Kumar sir. We'll meet you soon in the campus. I'll proceed with this venture as a joint venture. Thank you so much.
Sure, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.